My sister's kid pushed my kid's birthday presents into the pool and screamed, "Now nobody gets them." My sister said, "Don't bring your drama back here." I picked up my kids, smiled once, and said, "You'll wish I had." By morning, her messages turned desperate. The first box hit the water sideways, wrapping paper splitting open and bleeding blue dye into the pool before it even sank. The second one followed before I could move, my daughter's name still written on the tag, in my own handwriting. My niece Skylar stood at the edge with both hands still out from the throw, chest heaving, 8 years old, and screaming like she'd just won something. Now nobody gets them. The backyard had gone quiet around the pool the way a room does, right before something breaks. 12 kids frozen mid-game, the bounce house deflating slightly in the heat behind them. A paper banner reading "Happy Birthday Mia and Eli," sagging at one corner where the tape had given up an hour earlier. My sister Vanessa's own pool floats, the expensive kind shaped like flamingos, bobbed untouched in the deep end, the only thing in that water that was actually supposed to be there. The third box was the bike helmet Eli had been asking for since spring. It floated for a second, helmet straps spread out on the surface like something drowning slow, before the weight pulled it under. I had my phone out before I had words. Not to film anyone, just to get the timestamp, the angle, the pool, the boxes, the exact second this happened. Because some part of me that doesn't turn off even at a birthday party was already cataloging what I'd need later. Eli stood frozen by the snack table, a paper plate still in his hand. Mia had her hand fisted in the back of my shirt. My sister Vanessa came out the sliding door with a drink in her hand and looked at the pool like it was weather. Something that had simply happened. Nothing anyone in this yard had caused. "Don't bring your drama back here, Theo. She's 8. She gets overwhelmed." I looked at her for a second. "Just a second. You'll wish I had," I said, and I picked up my kids and walked to the car. If you're new here, welcome to Family Secret Tales. I'm Theo, and that pool was the easy part of this story. The part that actually mattered hadn't even started yet, and by the time my sister understood what she'd done, there wasn't a single person in that backyard who could have helped her undo it. Stay with me, because by morning, her messages turned desperate, and that was only the beginning. I didn't say anything else in the car. Mia fell asleep before we hit the highway. Eli stared out the window with the kind of stillness 9-year-olds only have when they're working very hard not to cry in front of their dad. My husband Jordan was already in the driveway when we pulled in, back from his own shift early, and he must have read something in my face through the windshield because he had the back door open before I'd even put the car in park. "What happened?" he said, low, already reaching for Mia. "Vanessa happened," I said. He didn't ask for the whole story right there in the driveway with the kids half asleep against us. He waited until both of them were down for the night, sat across from me at the kitchen table, and listened to the entire thing without interrupting once, which is its own kind of love I don't think I say out loud often enough. "She actually pushed the boxes in herself? Or just let Skylar do it?" he asked. "Skylar did it. Vanessa just stood there and told me not to bring drama back to her house." Jordan was quiet for a second. "That tracks," he said. "That tracks with literally every version of this I've watched happen since I met you." He's right, and that's the part that's hard to explain to people outside the family. This wasn't new. I have a memory from when I was maybe 10, Vanessa 7, of a school fundraiser where she told our entire third-grade class that I'd promised to match whatever they raised, dollar for dollar, out of my own paper route money. Something I'd never said. Something I had nowhere near the funds for. I found out when a kid named Marcus from her class, you'll hear that name in other stories too, it's a common one, cornered me at recess asking when he'd get his match for the $11 he'd raised. "I never said I'd match anything," I told him. "Your sister said you did. She said you make like $50 a week on your route." I went home that same afternoon and asked Vanessa about it directly. Still in my school clothes, backpack still on. She looked at me, 7 years old, completely unbothered. I just said it would probably happen. I didn't lie. Our mother praised her that same week for being such a generous, thoughtful little sister, for organizing the whole thing, while I spent the next 2 months explaining to confused classmates why the matching money never came. Nobody ever asked Vanessa why she'd said it. They asked me why I hadn't followed through on something I'd never promised. I've spent 35 years being the one who doesn't react. Not because I'm calm by nature, I'm not, but because somewhere around age 12 I figured out that reacting in my family just gave Vanessa something to perform against. She needed the contrast. The dramatic one needs someone steady standing next to her, or the drama doesn't read as drama, it just reads as a person being unreasonable in an empty room. What none of them ever clocked is what I actually do for a living. I review crowdfunding campaigns for fraud at a platform called HeartFund. Every day, all day, I read people's worst moments and decide which ones are real. I know what manufactured urgency sounds like in the first paragraph. I know what a fabricated timeline looks like before the second photo loads. It's not a skill I ever planned to need at a family event. It turned out to be the only one that mattered. Eli didn't say much about the pool for a few days. He's like me that way. Processes things slow and quiet. No big outburst. Just a kid who got noticeably more careful around his own birthday presents than a 9-year-old should have to be. He asked me once, almost casually, while we were loading the dishwasher, "Why did Skylar do that?" "I don't know, buddy," I said. "Sometimes people do things that don't make sense." Aunt Vanessa didn't even tell her to stop. "No," I said, "she didn't." He nodded like that confirmed something he'd already half known, and went back to handing me plates without asking anything further. I remember standing there thinking that whatever I did next had to actually fix something, not just make me feel better about how it had gone. 2 days after the pool, a coworker named Priya, not the same Priya you might know from other stories, forwarded me a link with no message attached except a question mark. I called her over to my desk instead of just replying. "You know this kid?" she asked, pointing at the screen, not realizing yet. "That's my son." She blinked. "Wait, what? This says he's sick. Is he sick?" "No," I said. "He's not." She sat down in the chair next to my desk without asking. The way coworkers do when they realize they've accidentally walked into something bigger than a Slack message. "That's your actual handwriting style of fraud, Theo. The pacing on this paragraph. You've shown me a dozen exactly like it." "I know," I said. "I wrote the training deck on this pattern. I almost didn't open it at my desk. Almost waited until lunch. Until I saw the subject line auto preview. Help Eli fight his battle. My son's name. My son's actual face. The photo from his birthday 2 months ago. The one where he's missing his front tooth and laughing at something off camera. Underneath it, a paragraph about a diagnosis that didn't exist, written in the exact rhythm I review 40 times a week. The urgent present tense, the vague medical language specific enough to sound real and vague enough to never be checked. The donation goal set just high enough to feel desperate and just low enough to feel achievable in a hurry. I read it twice to make sure I wasn't reading my own job into something that wasn't there. I wasn't. $3,100 raised already. In 2 days, from 41 donors, most of them names I half recognized from Vanessa's side of the family's old neighborhood. I'd flagged a campaign that same week, before any of this, a stranger in another state claiming his daughter needed a transplant. Donation goal $40,000. 2,000 donors moved within days. Same pacing. Same urgent present tense, same vague specificity. That one turned out to be real, verified within hours by the actual transplant center, funded fully by people who'd never met the family and never would. I'd approved it personally, felt good about it the way I rarely let myself feel good about anything at work. The skill that let me clear that man's campaign in an afternoon was the exact same skill now sitting in my own inbox, except this time the photo was my son's. I'd spent 4 years building a reputation as someone who could tell the difference between a real crisis and a well-written one. I never once imagined the well-written one would come from inside my own family, using my own kids as the proof of concept. I sat there for a long minute with my hand flat on the desk, not shaking, just still. I want to be honest about something here. There was a version of that afternoon where I almost called her right then. Almost let this be a phone call instead of what it became. What stopped me wasn't strategy. It was remembering the helmet floating in the pool, the way nobody in that yard had moved to stop it either, and understanding that calling her would just give her time to build a story before I had enough to make the story impossible. I saved the page, screenshotted every section, dated, time-stamped, the way I'd tell any client to do if they suspected something like this happening to them. I didn't message her. I didn't message my mother. I sat with it. This wasn't even the first time. 6 months earlier, Vanessa called me on a Tuesday, breezy, like she was asking to borrow a ladder. "I'm putting together a thing for a fundraising consultant gig," she'd said. Can I just mention I've worked with you informally? Nothing official, just a reference if anyone asks. What does that mean? Worked with me. You know, like, family adjacent. People like hearing there's someone in the industry who knows my work. I'd said sure, fine, thinking it meant nothing. The way I think most things involving Vanessa mean nothing until they cost me something specific. 2 weeks later, a confused woman named Renata emailed me directly, asking to confirm that I'd personally endorsed Vanessa Banks's fundraising services through my employer. I hadn't endorsed anything. I'd never even heard of the client. I wrote back a careful, professional correction, never told my family, filed the email in a folder I never opened again until the night I sat staring at my son's photo on a fraud campaign and remembered exactly where that folder was. I pulled it back up that night, read it again. It wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. It was a pattern with my name as the raw material, and now it had my kids' faces attached to it. The next morning I did what I do for actual clients every single day, except this time the client was my own family. I pulled the campaign's donor disbursement history through my verified compliance access, the same access I use 40 times a week for total strangers. The withdrawal pattern wasn't subtle once you knew where to look. 2 transfers totaling $1,800 had already moved into an account linked to Vanessa's name. Not a hospital, not a medical billing service, her own checking account. The same week she'd booked catering for what the invitation called a community appreciation gala. I called the pediatric specialist listed by name in the campaign's medical team section, identified myself plainly as a family member trying to verify a relative's treatment plan. Can I get the patient's date of birth and the date of the most recent visit? The receptionist asked. Professional, bored, used to this exact kind of call. I gave her Eli's information. There was a pause, typing, a longer pause. I'm not showing any patient by that name in our system at all. Not active, not discharged, nothing. Is it possible the record's under a different provider in the same practice? I checked the whole group, she said. There's nothing here. The office had no record of any patient matching Eli's information. Not delayed, not pending, non-existent. I sat with that for longer than I want to admit. There was a second moment that week where I almost let it go. Almost told myself this was a misunderstanding I was about to blow up into something unforgivable over a typo or a mix-up with another family's case. I ran the disbursement numbers a third time instead. They didn't change. Numbers don't perform for anyone. That whole week I kept going through the motions of an ordinary life while quietly building the opposite of one underneath it. School drop-off, packed lunches, a Tuesday night soccer practice where I stood on the sideline with 30 other parents and clapped for goals while a fraud case against my own sister sat open on my phone in my back pocket. Jordan caught me checking it twice during Eli's game. "You're gonna wear a hole in that screen," he said, not unkindly. "Almost done for tonight," I said. "You said that last night too." He wasn't wrong. I closed the app and watched the rest of the game, but my mind stayed half on the disbursement spreadsheet the entire second half, the way it had stayed half somewhere else for most of that week. I told Jordan about the disbursement numbers that night, sitting on the edge of our bed while he changed Mia's nightlight bulb. $1,800 already moved to her own account, I said. No hospital record at all. He set the bulb down. "Theo, that's not a misunderstanding anymore. I know what it is. Do you, though? Because you've got the same look you get when you're about to spend 3 weeks documenting something instead of just calling her and asking directly. If I call her, she has time to build a story." "I know," he said. "I'm not telling you you're wrong. I'm telling you to actually do something with it instead of just collecting it." He sat down next to me. "Your kids are the bait in this, Theo. Whatever you're building, build it fast." I didn't have a clean answer for that one either. My mother, Carmen, had shared the campaign publicly 4 times that week, each post more specific than the last, each one adding details I knew she couldn't actually have. A hospital wing, a doctor's name, a timeline. "I know my daughter," she wrote under the third post, when a stranger gently asked for an update. I didn't need to see paperwork to believe her. That line stuck with me more than anything Vanessa herself had said. My mother hadn't checked anything. She just decided belief was enough and put her own name behind it in public, where strangers were reading it as confirmation. I called her once that week, careful, neutral, mostly to see what she'd say without being asked directly. "How's Eli's fundraiser doing?" I asked, like I hadn't already pulled every number behind it. "Wonderfully," she said, bright. People have been so generous. I keep telling everyone, this family takes care of its own. Has anyone actually seen his chart? Talked to the doctor directly? Theo, why would I need to see a chart? Vanessa's not going to lie about something like this. People lie about all kinds of things, I said. Not about their own children, she said. Like that settled it. Like the category itself made certain lies impossible by definition. What about the gala? I asked. You going? Of course. Dominic's been planning it for weeks. He wants to do something special for Vanessa. All the stress she's been under. That's nice of him, I said, and meant it as flatly as it sounds now, knowing exactly what that special something had actually cost. I let it go. I didn't tell her what I already knew. Some part of me still wanted to see how far she'd carry the belief on her own, before I had to hand her the proof she'd never gone looking for. By the end of that week, the total had climbed past $9,000. Not from family. From people who'd never met any of us, moved by a photo of my son, and a diagnosis that had never existed in any chart anywhere. The invitation had arrived by text 3 days after the pool, like nothing had happened. A glossy digital flyer with a cursive font and a photo of Eli's face on it again. Hoping you and Jordan can make it Saturday, Vanessa wrote underneath it. It would mean so much to have family there. I stared at that message for a long time before answering. We'll be there, I wrote back, 4 words, nothing else. Thank you for understanding, she wrote, and I let that sit too, because she had no idea yet what exactly I was understanding. I filed an internal compliance flag on the campaign through my own employer's system 4 days before the date printed on the invitation, the one for Vanessa's Community Appreciation Gala, the event where she planned to thank donors in person and, according to the invite, share an update on Eli's journey. The flag required a written summary, a section I filled out the same way I'd fill it out for any stranger's case, betrayal type, evidence attached, recommended action. I typed my own sister's full legal name into a fraud intake form at 11 at night and didn't let myself feel anything about it until after I'd hit submit. My team lead, Alana Cho, pulled the case the next morning, the way she pulls every flag over a certain dollar threshold. She called me into a side room rather than messaging it. You know this is a family case, she said, not a question. I know. You want someone else to take it? No, I said. I want it to go through exactly the way it would for anyone else. I just need you available if it needs validating in person. Fast, on short notice. She studied me for a second, then nodded slowly. There's a gala, I added. Saturday. You're going to trigger this live? In front of people? That's the plan. That's not how we usually handle these, she said, but it's not against any rule I can point to either. Just make sure I'm reachable the second you need me. Send me the time, she said. I'll have my laptop. I didn't tell anyone what I'd filed. I didn't warn my mother. I didn't call Vanessa. I RSVP'd, yes. The way I always did, the responsible one showing up. Exactly the role she'd built her whole performance around, assuming I'd keep playing. I want to pause here for a second, because this is usually where people in the comments ask how I stayed quiet that long. The honest answer is that loud doesn't always mean fast. Sometimes the loudest version of a thing is the one you build slowly enough that nobody sees it coming until it's already happening to them in front of a room full of witnesses. That's what Family Secret Tales is built on. The quiet part before the part everybody actually wants to talk about. Stick around, because that part's next. The morning of the gala, the sitter arrived at 5, and Jordan found me in the bathroom mirror, tying my tie for the 3rd time, because my hands weren't quite steady enough to get it right the first 2. You don't have to do this tonight, he said, leaning against the doorframe. You could let the compliance team handle the freeze remotely, skip the whole thing. I want to be in the room. I know, he said. I just wanted on record that I offered you the easy version. Noted, I said, and finally got the tie straight. Mia hugged my leg before we left, asked if we'd bring her cake from Aunt Vanessa's party. I told her this one wasn't a kid's party, just grown-ups talking. She seemed satisfied with that and went back to her cartoons. Eli didn't ask anything, just watched us leave with the same careful, quiet attention he'd had since the pool. Like he already understood, in the way kids sometimes do without being told, that whatever was happening tonight mattered. The gala was held in a rented community hall. String lights, a slideshow looping on a screen behind a small podium, 40-some guests in their good clothes holding plastic cups of wine. Jordan came with me. Kids left with the sitter, and squeezed my hand once at the door. No words, just pressure. The kind that means I see what this actually is, even if nobody else in this room does yet. My mother hugged me at the door like nothing had happened in that backyard 2 weeks earlier. Her perfume the same as it's always been. A smell I'd associated with comfort my whole life, and now associated with something closer to static. Dominic, Vanessa's husband, was working the room with the particular charm of a man who'd planned every centerpiece himself. Shaking hands, thanking people for coming, steering conversation away from any actual medical specifics with practiced ease, gesturing toward a silent auction table stacked with donated gift baskets near the entrance. $600 in raffle tickets sold before the program had even started. "You good?" Jordan asked quietly, finding a spot near the back wall with me. "I'm good," I said, and meant it differently than he probably read it. Vanessa took the podium at 7:15, and the room went quiet on its own, the way rooms do for someone who knows exactly how to perform grief. 18 months ago, she started, voice already catching. I watched my nephew Eli go through something no child should have to face. I stood near the back with my phone already in my hand, already logged in, the campaign's compliance ID pulled up on screen. My thumb hovering over a button most people watching me would have assumed was just a text message. "There were nights I sat with my sister-in-law in waiting rooms," she said, and I felt Jordan go very still beside me at the word sister-in-law, at the casual ease with which she'd invented an entire relationship between herself and a wife who'd never once sat with her in any waiting room about anything, wondering if we'd ever get a normal Tuesday back. A woman near the front dabbed at her eyes with a cocktail napkin. Someone else nodded slowly, the particular nod people give when a stranger's pain has become, for a moment, theirs to carry too. "The doctors told us this would be a long fight," she said, gesturing toward the screen, where Eli's missing tooth photo filled the entire projection, 12 feet tall, smiling at a room of strangers who'd paid to see it. "And every single one of you has been part of that fight with us." I let her finish that sentence completely. I let her get all the way to, "And that's why tonight means so much to our family," before I pressed the button. The freeze hit the campaign instantly. Platform side, official, my own verified flag converting in real time into an active fraud hold. Refund notifications started firing to every donor's phone within seconds. The exact donation amount, the exact words, "campaign suspended pending fraud review." The first phone buzzed 3 rows from the front, mid-applause. Then another, 2 seats over. Then it wasn't isolated anymore, it was a wave moving through the room, dozens of pockets and purses lighting up at once. That specific collective sound of a room full of people checking their phones, simultaneously and not liking what they're seeing. "What is this?" a woman near the front said, not quietly, holding her screen up like evidence. "It says fraud review. What does that mean, fraud review?" Vanessa's smile didn't drop right away. "That's the part people don't expect. There's clearly some kind of technical glitch with the platform tonight," she said, laughing once, brittle. "These things happen. I'll have my husband look into it after the program." "My phone says it's a confirmed hold," another guest said, louder. "Not a glitch, a hold." I walked forward then, not fast, not shouting, just close enough that the room could hear me without me raising my voice. "It's not a glitch," I said. "I'm the one who triggered it." The room turned toward me as one body. Vanessa's eyes found mine across the podium, and for the first time in this entire performance, she looked completely thrown. "Theo, what are you doing?" she said, and the catch in her voice wasn't grief anymore. It was something closer to panic, trying to wear grief's clothes one more time. "Why would you do this here, tonight, in front of everyone?" "I work in fraud compliance," I said. "I review campaigns exactly like this one for a living. There's no record of Eli at the practice you listed. There's no diagnosis. 2 transfers totaling $1,800 already moved into your personal account before tonight." A second wave of phones buzzed, the refund confirmations landing now. Real numbers, real amounts, hitting people's banking apps in real time, while they stood in a rented hall, holding cups of donated wine. Someone near the silent auction table said, loud enough to carry, "Mine says $400, refunded." Another voice answered it from across the room, "Mine too." A third, from somewhere near the back, just said flatly, "Same," like the word itself had become a kind of evidence. "This is insane," Vanessa said, voice climbing. You're embarrassing me in front of every person I know over a misunderstanding. I'm not asking you to be embarrassed, I said. I'm confirming what the platform already confirmed. Dominic moved fast then, crossing from the side of the room toward me, hand already out. Give me the phone, he said, low, urgent, like this was still something he could manage with logistics. We can fix this quietly, just give me the phone. There's nothing left to fix quietly, I said. It already went out to 41 people. You don't understand what you're doing right now, he said, closer, voice dropping further. Do you have any idea how much we've already spent on tonight? I have a pretty good idea, I said. 1,800 of it came out of donations meant for a sick kid who doesn't exist. He grabbed for the phone anyway, missed, his hand closing on air where it had been a second earlier, and the room watched a grown man lunge for a screen in front of his own catering staff. Jordan stepped half a pace closer to me without a word, not threatening, just present, the kind of quiet backup that doesn't need to say anything to be felt. Dominic straightened his jacket, visibly aware now of how that had looked to the room full of people whose centerpieces he'd personally arranged. He didn't try again. A woman near the back, someone I didn't recognize, someone who'd clearly donated tonight, asked the question that actually ended it. Is the diagnosis real? She said. Plain, direct, not unkind, just done waiting. Is your son actually sick? Yes or no? Vanessa opened her mouth. Nothing came out for 3 full seconds, which in a silent room full of 40 people is a very long time. You said his hair was falling out. Another voice called from somewhere near the middle of the room, an older man this time, the kind of voice that sounds like it's used to being listened to. I gave $400 because you said his hair was falling out. Vanessa flinched at that, visibly, the first time her composure actually cracked rather than just wavered. I never said that exactly, she started. You posted a video, the man said. I watched it twice. My mother stepped forward instead, the way she always does when Vanessa runs out of road. I know my daughter, she said, the same line from her post. Except this time, it landed into a room that had already seen the refund notifications. I've known her whole life. She would never... Did you verify any of it before you posted about a hospital wing that doesn't exist? The same woman asked her directly. My mother didn't answer that one either. I dialed the number Alana had given me, already saved under her name, and turned my screen so the room could see it connect. She picked up on the first ring, exactly where she'd said she'd be. Laptop open at her kitchen table at home. This is Alana Cho. Fraud compliance, she said. Professional, brief, not unkind, not dramatic. I can confirm this campaign is under an active fraud hold as of 7:31 tonight. All donor funds are being processed for full refund. This is a private event, Vanessa said weakly. To no one in particular, to the room that was no longer hers. It's confirmed, Alana said again, and ended the call. A man near the silent auction table picked up the $600 in raffle tickets he'd just bought and set them back down on the table like they'd gone cold in his hand. A woman 2 tables over pulled her own daughter, roughly Skylar's age, closer to her side, the kind of instinctive motion a parent makes without deciding to make it. Skylar herself stood near the dessert table, watching the room turn on her mother, her birthday party bravado from 2 weeks earlier, nowhere in her small, confused face now. Carmen tried one more time, quieter, almost to herself. She's my daughter. I raised her better than this. Did you? The same donor asked, not cruel, just final. Because from where I'm standing, you raised someone who used a sick kid that doesn't exist to pay for tonight's catering. Nobody clapped, nobody whispered. A few people simply set their cups down on the nearest table and started gathering their coats. The specific, polite, devastating sound of a room deciding it was done. I had one thing left to do. I pulled up the redirect option on my own screen, the same dashboard, a different button this time, and pointed remaining donor interest toward a campaign that had existed quietly for 2 years, with almost no visibility, the Desmond Banks Memorial Scholarship, named for our father, who'd spent 30 years teaching shop class to kids nobody else wanted to deal with and never once asked for credit for it. I confirmed the redirect live, screen still in my hand. My son was never sick, I said. The only thing I let myself say that wasn't pure fact. Quiet, not for the room, mostly for myself. He doesn't get to find out one day that strangers paid for a story that was never his. I turned the phone around once, screen facing the room. The refund confirmations and the redirect notice both visible for anyone who wanted to see it themselves rather than take my word for it. Then I pocketed it, found my mother's eyes one more time, said nothing further. Skylar was still standing near the dessert table as Jordan and I made our way to the door. 8 years old, one hand still wrapped around a paper plate of untouched cake, watching the room empty around her mother, with an expression I recognized too well, the same careful stillness Eli had worn for days after the pool. I crouched down once, briefly, on my way past. "None of this is your fault," I told her. "You hear me?" She nodded, not really understanding yet, and I left it at that, because explaining the rest wasn't mine to do. Not tonight, not to an 8-year-old standing in the wreckage of her own birthday party. Jordan and I drove home in near silence, and I texted the sitter from the car to let her know we'd be back within the hour, that the kids could stay up a little late watching their show if they wanted. Eli was still awake when we got back, sitting on the couch with Mia already asleep against him. He looked up at me with that same careful attention from the week before. "Did you fix it?" he asked, like he already knew there was something to fix, even though I'd never told him the details. "Yeah," I said, sitting down next to him. "I fixed it." "Was it about the fundraiser thing?" Mom mentioned it to Jordan on the phone once and I heard. I hadn't realized he'd caught that. "It was," I said. "Someone used your name to ask people for money for something that wasn't true." He thought about that for a second, the way he thinks about most things. Slow and serious. "That's why you had your work phone the whole time at dinner that one night." "Pretty much." "Okay," he said, like that settled something for him too, and leaned his head back against the couch. I carried him to bed a few minutes later, the way I used to when he was small enough to actually need it, even though at 9 he mostly didn't anymore. By morning, her messages turned desperate the way I knew they would. I read the first one standing in my kitchen with coffee I hadn't touched yet. "You destroyed me in front of everyone I know. You couldn't have talked to me first? You couldn't have given me a chance to explain?" 6 more came in over the next 2 hours, the tone shifting each time. Anger, then bargaining, then something that almost sounded like an apology without ever actually being one. "I never asked you to pay for any of it," the last one said. "You just like being the one everyone needs." I didn't respond that night. I let the messages sit, unread after the first. The way she'd let those gift boxes sink without moving to stop them. I almost typed something back twice that week. Full paragraphs explaining exactly why this had happened, exactly how long I'd known, exactly what she'd cost 41 strangers, and our own father's actual memory. I deleted both drafts. What stopped me the second time was picturing Eli at the snack table that day at the pool, frozen, watching adults decide what his face was worth in a room he hadn't been asked about either time. I replied once. The next morning, one line. "The redirect to Dad's scholarship is final. There's nothing left to discuss." Jordan read both his and her message threads over my shoulder that morning without saying anything for a minute. "You good?" he asked, the same 2 words from the gala door. "I think so," I said. "It doesn't feel like I thought it would." "What did you think it would feel like?" "Bigger, louder, after." I shrugged. "It just feels finished." "That's probably what done actually feels like," he said. "The movie version's the only one that comes with a soundtrack." The campaign stayed permanently banned from the platform, the account flagged in Heart Fund's internal system in a way that would surface automatically if Vanessa or Dominic ever tried opening a new one under either of their names. Within the week, Heart Fund's fraud team referred the case to their payment processor's shared fraud consortium, the same network every major crowdfunding and donation platform checks before approving a new merchant account, which meant Vanessa's name was now flagged across platforms, not just one. A consumer protection investigator from the State Attorney General's Charitable Solicitations Division called me directly to confirm the timeline, since several donors had filed their own complaints independently once the local news picked up a short item about the campaign's suspension. I gave a brief statement, mostly dates and document references, the same kind of statement I'd give for any other case. The investigator told me the file would stay open for review regardless of whether the family pursued anything further. Evidence preserved on the platform's side either way. 2 donors filed formal fraud reports with their own banks, disputing the original charges directly rather than waiting on the platform refund, which triggered a separate review on Vanessa's linked checking account. My mother's credibility in that community didn't recover the way she probably assumed it eventually would. 3 weeks after the gala, under pressure from a few of the donors who'd messaged her directly, she posted a public retraction on the same page where she'd vouched for the campaign. 4 sentences, no excuses, confirming she'd shared information she never verified and apologizing to everyone who donated based on her word. The $2,400 she'd personally seeded into the campaign early on, meant to look like the first real donations and pull others in behind it, never came back to her. The platform's fraud team classified it as part of the same hold. Dominic lost both of the other community events he'd been lined up to coordinate that spring, the organizers citing the gala incident directly in their cancellation emails, and a regional event planning association he'd belonged to for years quietly didn't renew his membership that cycle. Vanessa sent one more message after my redirect line, 3 words, "I hope you're happy," and neither of us sent anything after that. My mother called twice in the weeks that followed, both times leaving voicemails I let sit for a few days before listening. The first was mostly silence, a sigh, her voice starting and stopping. The second was steadier. "I should have asked to see something," she said, near the end of it. "I didn't want to know it wasn't true, so I didn't ask. I understand if that's not enough." I didn't call her back that week. I did, eventually, a month later, a short conversation. Nothing resolved completely, but a door left open a crack instead of shut all the way, which felt like the most honest place to leave it. She asked, near the end of that call, whether Eli and Mia would still want to see her at the holidays. I told her that was between her and them, not something I planned to decide on their behalf, the same way I hadn't decided in advance how loud that night at the gala needed to be. Some things I've learned work better left to find their own true level. The scholarship picked up more in donor interest that single week, $11,000 more than it had in the 2 years before it combined. People who'd come to a gala for the wrong reason finding their way, afterward, to the right one. 3 weeks later, we rescheduled the kid's birthday properly. Small, in our own backyard, no pool this time, just a folding table strung with the same leftover streamers from the first attempt and the actual presents, replaced one at a time, helmet included. Eli wore it around the yard for an hour straight, even though there was nothing to ride. Mia fell asleep on the grass before the cake came out. I invited Skylar separately, through my mother, a small gesture I wasn't sure would even land. She came with my mother for an hour, quiet at first, then eventually out on the grass with Eli and Mia, 3 kids who hadn't done anything to each other, running through a sprinkler like none of the adults' wreckage belonged to them at all. I watched her laugh once, properly, the first time I'd seen that since the gala, and thought, not for the first time, that whatever Vanessa had built, it hadn't managed to ruin the actual kid underneath it yet. Jordan sat down next to me on the back step that evening with 2 coffees, handed me one, kept the other for himself. "Helmet's a hit," he said, nodding toward Eli as he circled the yard for the 3rd time. "He doesn't even know what it cost the first time," I said. "He doesn't need to. That's the whole point." Jordan nudged my shoulder with his. "You did the part that mattered. The rest of it's just paperwork now." I sat on the back step that evening with a cup of coffee I actually drank, watching them, the quiet that comes after something loud finally finishes being loud. I used to think being the responsible one meant staying quiet no matter what landed in front of me, absorbing it, smoothing it over so the next family gathering could happen without anyone having to feel anything uncomfortable. I don't think that anymore. Being responsible turned out to mean something closer to what I actually did that night in the rented hall. Not staying quiet, but knowing exactly when quiet stopped being useful and switching, deliberately, to loud, the same way you'd flip a breaker the moment quiet current turns into something dangerous. Vanessa still lives 20 minutes from us. We'll probably end up in the same room again eventually. A funeral, a holiday neither of us can fully avoid. I'm not dreading it the way I might have a year ago. There's nothing left for her to perform in front of me that I haven't already seen the wiring behind. Some need is real, because someone's actually carrying it. The rest is just a story somebody tells well enough that strangers stop asking who it's actually for. If your family's ever turned your own kids into a prop for something that wasn't true, I want to hear in the comments how you finally made them put it down. I'll see you in the next one.